Hello and welcome to the lecture on what is object. Till now we have seen what is OOP's concept, what is classes and how to define classes, what are property and methods and how to define it. We have written some code and we have executed it. But there was no output, so now we have to create a real life object, means an object from your class. That's what we're going to see in this lecture. So in this lecture, we're going to explain what is objects in OOPs and then we'll start writing objects for your classes. So what are objects? Objects are used to access properties and method of a class. So we have seen previously when we defined our car class, we have defined our post class. When you executed that code, there's nothing output because class doesn't get execute. Class is just a documentation. Whenever the PHP interpreter sees the class, is just skip the class. Right, it doesn't go inside the class. The way we execute the methods inside the class is via the object. So you have to define an object of a class, and via the object you basically call and access the property or methods of a class. Okay, so you need to create an object of a class and then start accessing the property and call the method of that class using that object. Okay, so objects are also called as instance of a class. Well, this is again a change in the lingo. So when you're saying object of a class, you have to say instance of a class. Objects are also called as instance of a class. You can create unlimited object for a single class. Means you have a car class, you can create n number of objects, and you can objects basically you can say car 1, car 2, car 3, car. You can have n number of instance of an object, and each object is independent of another object. When you create an instance of a class, that specific instance will hold the variable and data specific to that object. Okay, we're going to look into all those things. As of now, remember that to access a class methods and properties, you need an object. And as we discussed, each object properties are unique to that specific instance of a class. An example could be you have a car 1 or object of a car class, and you have a property called name inside that object, and you have assigned some value. Then you define car 2 with some different property of that name. Then the two car have those properties independent to each other. Okay, and then they are specific to that object and independent of each other. We're going to look into all those details now. So how to create an object? So let's say you have a car class with a property called $name and you have a method called say hello. How do you create an instance? You have to create an instance with this notation. You have to a $car 1. That's basically the name of your object. Then you have a keyword called new. Then you have to define the class name and then the open parenthesis and close parenthesis, and then end with a semicolon. So car 1 is basically called as object of a car class, or car 1 is called as an instance of a car. Okay, this is how you define and create an object. So now using car 1, you can access the property and you can access the methods. Okay, car 1 is an object of a car class. Car 1 is also an instance of a car class. Okay, how do you access the properties? If you want to access the property of a car class, you have to do via the objects. And now just now you have defined car 1 as an object. So using that object, you can access the property of that class. So how you access it? There's a notation like this which you use it for arrays. It's the same notation. You have a dash and a greater than symbol, and then you specify the property, and that property doesn't have a $sign here. Remember that there's only $sign on the starting, there's no $sign afterwards, and you access that property and you assign that value to it. Okay, it's as simple as assigning a value to a variable. Here you basically use an object to access that property and assign that value to a property. Okay, so this is a symbol dash and greater than, the same symbol to access the array elements, the same symbol that is used to access the property of a class. Okay, how do you call the method? Again, the same notation will be used. You use the object and the notation hyphen greater than symbol, then you call the method of that class, and once you call it, then that method will get executed. Okay, so this is the way you basically call a method of a car class. So by now you should be able to understand what is object, what is the purpose of an object, how to define an object, how to access the property of an class via the object and how to call the method of a class via the object. We're going to write a program to see all these details, but conceptually you should be able to understand this now. Okay, so that's all for this lecture on what is object, and I'll see you in the next one.